Ready to cook? Well, my guest is Alicia Shevetone. She's Las Vegas's pop-up chef, television personality, creator of Dink Cuisine, a food and entertainment organization that curates culinary experiences across print, digital, social, and live media. We'll compact that out and explain exactly what that means, because that's a mouthful. She is also author of Italian Cookbook for Two and Vegetarian Ketogenic Cookbook for Beginners. She got a new book coming out too, but we'll talk about that. And if that weren't enough, Chef Alicia also has a line of spirit-infused seasonings called Distilled Spices, 7 signature blends concocted in Vegas. For everything about Chef Alicia Shevetone, go to dinkcuisine.com, D-I-N-K, dinkcuisine.com, and distilledspices.com. And you can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Pinterest. And Alicia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ira.
Sure. You have so many things going on that I suspect you have ADHD. Would I be wrong?
I don't. No. I just, I guess I have a lot of energy. I don't know. I don't really sleep very much. So, but it's through excitement, not because I can't sleep.
Oh, that's great. No, every time I'm reading your background and what happened and how you got here, and I want you to share with our viewers and listeners about that. But every time I read through it, it's like, how does she have the energy to do all that? And I realize that I'm somewhat lazy, so that's probably why I sleep. So unlike you, but you look better than me anyway, sleeping. So Dink, which is interesting, Dink Cuisine, Dink stands for dual income, no kids, right?
Right.
And I want you to work out in your next project, Nink, which is no income, no kids. So find out, see how we do with that. So
that's a good one. I haven't heard that one. I've heard of Sinks, which is single income, no kids. But yeah, Nink is like, yeah.
Yeah, it's primarily for poor people who have no kids. So create a whole cuisine. How did you get into the whole area of cooking and then into spirits and spices and all of that? We'll talk about all that. We have the time to do it. But tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I grew up in Silicon Valley, and entrepreneurship is just, embedded there.
Oh yeah, DNA, yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of part of, the California dream. And I was one of those kids who thought she knew what she wanted to do, when she grew up, and I wanted to be a lawyer, went to law school, first year in law school, realized I don't like law at all.
Again, ADHD. I mean, you're going from college to law school to now what you're doing in Las Vegas. So, all right, go ahead. I had to interrupt again with that.
No. But, it was a moment of panic set in because, with a liberal arts degree, I didn't want to teach. I was an English major with a writing emphasis. I had no idea, I wanted to prepare myself for law school to be able to, read a lot, write a lot, that sort of thing, and just sort of interpret from a composition perspective. And then it was like, well, okay, now what do I do? So I went through, actually finished my Juris Doctorate, and then went into high-tech sales because I didn't know what else to do. And it was 90s, sure. Silicon Valley 90s. It's like what everybody else did. You went into high-tech sales.
Logical segue from law school, sure.
Right, exactly. And there was a little bit of thought that went into it because I realized that every job, I had worked full-time pretty much from high school graduation all the way through undergrad and law school. So, and every job I had sales in some sort of capacity. So it wasn't that much of a stretch. So I actually knew how to sell. But then, I got into professional services. So I kind of worked my way up, was promoted to become an executive in 2011. Several years after that, I was promoted to CEO of a consulting firm in Silicon Valley, which is, still part of what I do. I still do have that position and I still do contribute, to that firm, and it's corporate training. So big clients like Amazon, Adobe, Walmart, those sorts of companies and corporate training. And when I look back on my career and I realized that, my personal passion was food, and everything in my family really had to do with food at its core. When you celebrate, when you're sad, when you're trying to comfort someone, there was always food involved. And my mom is a phenomenal cook. Piedmont area of Italy, Northern Italian as my mom's side of the family. My dad's side of the family is French. My grandfather was born in Lyon. grandmother was born in Marseille. So straight down the middle, French and Italian, just food is just kind of part of who I am.
Sure.
Started cooking. And right before I turned 50, I decided that I wanted to give a gift to my mom and publish a cookbook. So I wrote my first cookbook, self-published that, called it Italian Cookbook for Two. And
Mhm.
that was when I realized that people responded really, really well to recipes for two. Personally, as I got older and as I hit middle age, I was starting to gain a lot of weight because I'm a good soldier and I take a recipe from a cookbook or online and it's 6 to 8 servings.
Right.
And I'm not a meal planner. I don't believe in that. I believe in eating for the moment, not 2 weeks from now and
Mhm.
pulling a brick out of the freezer. I realized I was eating more portions than I was supposed to, just simply because the recipe was there and there was only me and my husband. So I
And you
started,
didn't want to waste. You didn't want to waste the food.
you don't want to waste the food.
Yeah.
And, so leftovers, whatever. I'm not, really into leftovers. I would rather be very mindful about what I'm making, create recipes for two. So that's really how Dual Income No Kids Dink Cuisine was formed. In addition to writing the cookbook for two, it really just sort of took off. And all of a sudden I had this second act that people are really responding well to.
Well, it's interesting too, because given your background, and you answered my question before I got asked it, which is what kind of food you were raised with, but
Mhm.
you explained Italian and French, which is a great combination.
Yeah.
But also to the fact that coming from your family, it would seem that Dink is in a way foreign because you're normally cooking for a whole family and you're eating for a whole family. So this was a leap you had to make to realize I don't want to waste food now. It's just me and my husband and the 14 goats and the 3 cats and all that stuff, but they don't eat your food. So, I mean, I'm making that up. You don't have goats and cats, or maybe you do.
I do not.
Okay, you know, but so now you come up. How did you scale it so that the recipes would work for you? Because I would imagine it's not just taking what the original recipe was, say for 4 or 8 or 12, and
Mhm.
scaling it down. I think you had to modify it even more. Would I be right? Wrong? In between?
Yeah, and so I am an only child. And my mom, the way that my mom cooked when I was little and all throughout, even now is smaller portions. We weren't the type of family that had like, 20 people over.
Mm.
At any given time there were, she was cooking for two or for three at the most. Or if I had a friend over before. But yeah, there's a lot of math. So when you try to take something like lasagna, let's just take something very basic like
Right.
lasagna. My strategy is you change the vessel, right? So you have to change it from like a big casserole dish to a loaf pan. So when you
Mhm.
when you put something in the form of a loaf pan, which is almost still too big, for two portions, that's like two really gigantic pieces of lasagna. But if you change the vessel and you sort of change the obviously you scale down the ingredients.
Mhm.
Those are sort of ways that you use everything has become smaller, everything's smaller format from your utensil, the spatulas you're using. I mean, you're not using something that's like this big, you're using something that's this big, and it's a philosophy, it's a way to sort of scale back your kitchen. All the ingredients that you have, all the equipment that you have just gets smaller, and it just works. But yeah, there is a lot of math when it comes to the ingredients.
Yeah, I would imagine. And then there is a definite market for this because there are a lot of couples that are dual income, no kids, or even
Mhm.
just the kids have grown and they're gone, to college or work or whatever. And so here's another way of approaching it. Of all the dishes that you put together for your book, and you have 2 books and a third on the way, what was your favorite dish? Was it lasagna, as you mentioned, or was it something else?
There's a white chicken lasagna that's in my first cookbook, that is just phenomenal. It has ground chicken, which a lot of people don't, you think Italian food, most people are familiar with
Mhm.
Italian sausage or, of course, like in a traditional bolognese, you would use, ground beef or, obviously different ways to make it. But my white chicken lasagna is made with ground chicken, and it's a bechamel. That's just more the French influence, right? And Northern Italian, and in the North, you see a lot more cream sauces. It's more risotto. It's more, it's different than when we think of Italian food here in the U.S., which is the red sauces and the
Mhm.
the deep, the hearty. this is, I don't want to use the word refined because it's not like good or bad. It's more of the butter, the cream, the influence of the North, which is also a French influence from my dad's side. Yeah. So it's a really good recipe.
Have you heard from readers outside of the United States that have bought the cookbooks and are experimenting with what the recipes are in there?
My demographic is very much American. It's very domestic.
Okay.
Now for my website, that's an interesting thing that you bring up, Ira, because from my website, my website garners, viewers from, attention from over 100 countries. There's a lot of people from Canada, and I do get a lot of people coming to the website from Italy. But in terms of like people that are actually buying my books and stuff, it's pretty American, actually.
I forgot to ask you earlier, but I think it's a good question. What's your husband's reaction to your midlife change of career and focus? Is he supportive or is he okay with it?
Yeah, well, he's my primary recipe tester, so he loves it. But he's and he's an artist, so he's same type of story, very corporate, kind of grew up. He was a musician in the 80s, still is a musician, but he was in bands, put out an album in 1987. He'll be the first to tell you. So just as I was sort of entering my cuisine phase, like he's painting and he's been, his focus now is getting into different galleries here in Vegas. He actually has an exhibit in New Mexico. I think that's going on right now. So he is extremely prolific from an art perspective. Acrylic on canvas is his medium. And so he's busy and he doesn't need me to,
Does he have a website? You can mention it if you want.
He does. It's chevetoneartgallery.com. Yeah, all of his stuff is available online and in print, so people can buy originals, of course, but they can also buy prints, which a lot of our friends and network here in Vegas have been incredibly supportive. And he's doing a lot of Asian inspired artwork. So he's getting a lot of attention in Japan, actually. So
he could also do some acrylic of some of your dishes. That would be a great way.
It would be good, right?
Helping the marriage, I think. Mention it to him. See what he says.
I will. That's a good idea.
Of course. And then you also would do pop-ups. So just for the record, for our listeners and viewers, Alicia popped up in my kitchen the other day and made me a wonderful salad and a little chicken on the side. I'm making that up. She didn't pop up. So how often do you do a pop-up around Las Vegas?
Well, so the pop-ups, I have a summer series that's at Forte Tapas. So I don't know if you know Nina Manchev.
Yes, she was on the show. Yes.
Yeah, she's amazing, a friend of mine, and she's been incredibly supportive. We've got a pop-up going at Forte Tapas on July 26th, actually, which is only 2 tickets away from being sold out, but really excited about that. And
that's a great restaurant. She was on my other show, my other podcast, Ira's Everything Bagel, where she was a guest. Wonderful cuisine, wonderful food. So absolutely. So you're 2 tickets away then. 2 tickets away. Well, listen, maybe those sold and it'll be fine. So it's a summer series. So you do it seasonally. Would that be the way to explain it?
So there's just so many different things that I've done. I've had a residency at Vegas Valley Winery for 2 years. And we're taking a break for the summer because they start to get really busy in September for winemaking. They've got a wine school there through Grape Expectations. You might be familiar with it. It's
very familiar with Grape Expectations.
So it starts to get super tight back there. And in the tasting room, we usually cap it to 30 tickets. It sells out every time. We've been doing those every other month. We're going to take a break and pick those up again, probably in October or November. So no dates set yet, but that's been something that's been, phenomenal for the past, 2 years that we know will continue. So look for more dates on that as well.
Good. Before I want to talk to you about your spices in a moment, but let's mention your third cookbook called Food with Spirit. It's on pre-sale now, ships, I believe, September 26th.
Yes, it does.
Food with Spirit indicates to me that there is alcohol involved. Am I correct? Or is it a play on words? It's spirit, meaning your enthusiasm and also the alcohol.
Great play on words. Yeah. It is actually 50 alcohol infused recipes. So I break it down from, appetizers, sides, soups, mains, and desserts. And I go across the spectrum. So, and it's what I say in the introduction is that I am not really a big spirit drinker. I pretty much tap out at vodka and coconut rum. I know it's sounds
Interesting
horrible for,
combination. Yeah.
a chef, but everybody loves bourbon and whiskey and things like that. And I can't drink it. So that is my workaround, because if I cook with it, I kind of feel like I can be part of it.
Yeah, no, that makes
You know,
sense.
yeah,
I
but
would think it would be kind of hard for you to market it to AA though, because of
yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah,
That's
that wouldn't work.
yeah.
But you've created, in addition to this cookbook, the new one coming out, you also have a whole other, and we mentioned in the beginning, distilledspices.com. So these are spices. Once again, I believe beginning to think you have a problem, Alicia, because it's again infused with spirits.
Yes.
Yes.
All my pop-ups are sort of alcohol related. I don't think I did one brunch pop-up that was paired with coffees, different types of coffees,
Mhm.
at a Taste of Coffee in Henderson. That was super fun. But yeah, everything else is involving some sort of alcohol by volume. Yeah. So the distilled spices are 7 blends that are premium spice blends, spirit infused with real alcohol. So no imitation flavors. There are a lot of sauces and rubs that are available on the market. By and large, 99% of them are imitation flavors. Just like
Hmm.
you would get like an extract
Mhm.
when you're baking, like a rum extract.
Mhm.
It's 99% of the time you're getting artificial flavors. I was approached by a local manufacturer, Dress the Drink, here in Las Vegas at an event that I had at Sahara. It was a pop-up event to celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week. It was last November. And Cindy McClure, who owns Dress the Drink, she's been in business, I think, for about 14 or 15 years, just doubled the size of her facility here in Las Vegas. She manufactures garnishes, syrups. She also has a seasoning line. She works with, Sahara, Golden Tiki, Disney, Starbucks, really, really big companies. Asked me if I had ever considered, because of my new cookbook, Food with Spirit, which we were promoting, as early as back in November,
Mhm.
having a seasoning line that would be alcohol infused. And not something that I had ever considered until she approached me. And it took 6 months to put together, because we were very, very mindful about, the blends and balance and which spirits were we going to use and how
And you
could
were falling asleep at the kitchen table putting those spirits in there, weren't you?
pretty much.
Yeah, there
Um,
you go.
but yeah, but like, I don't know if you remember when you were, maybe in the 80s, or, a kid, the French onion soup mix that would come in the pack,
Mhm.
and
I
then you would
do.
pour it into a tub of sour cream. What I wanted was to have something that was nostalgic, not just seasonings for rubs, but seasonings that people could use in a variety of ways. So I have a French onion blend that's brandy infused, but they're not meant to be boozy. I mean, they're very subtle. It's more about the balance of flavor and sort of like the Vegas kind of spirit component of, hey, this is something that's really cool and edgy. It's not meant to be boozy, but you take the French onion, you can put it in Greek yogurt, or you could use my limoncello pepper, which is, an elevated version of lemon pepper. Everybody loves lemon pepper. I make mine with limoncello. Same sort of thing, put it in Greek yogurt. It makes a phenomenal dip. In addition to using it in, with proteins and, all the other things that you would use seasonings and rubs for.
Well, I know that when you cook with alcohol, it tends to dissipate, the alcohol content dissipates. In the spices that you do, is the alcoholic content still there, or is it diminished somewhat? How does that work?
It's less than 3% alcohol by volume. So it is actual ingredients, actual liquor that is infused into the blends, but
Right.
it's sort of balanced out. And by the time it actually settles and soaks in, it's a very, very small amount. But yes, it is actual alcohol, and it is divulged on the packaging. But every single blend is less than 3% alcohol by volume.
Would you technically then have to be 21 to buy it?
No, no,
Interesting.
no. Just like when you buy like a bourbon barbecue sauce or something along
Oh,
those
okay.
lines. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
the same thing. It's a consumer packaged good, and all the label is to FDA specifications
Right.
for all of these things, including the divulging alcohol as a liquor, as a
You,
ingredient.
well, you mentioned it took you about 6 months to put it together. That's not that long, actually, when you think about it, in terms of getting the ratios right and the
Mhm.
taste right and the impact right and all of that. That's actually pretty fast.
Yeah, it seemed like forever. I mean, honestly, and I joke about this, but it's the truth. I think I put more time and effort into launching this brand than I did all three of my cookbooks combined. I mean, it was truly a labor of love, and it's only because again, maybe it's a Silicon Valley thing. I'm just used to doing things so quickly,
Hmm.
that it seems like it took forever. I guess it really didn't, but it seemed
It
like it.
seemed like it. Yeah, no, for you it would, because you obviously you're a type A personality, which is
Yeah.
exhausting to me, but okay, it probably has to be that way. When you were looking at the spices too, I would think it's similar to baking in that unlike cooking where you can fool around a little bit with proportion or portion control and different ratios and still get a great result. In baking, you have to be exact. At least that's my understanding. So is it the same with the spices that you have to be exact? And that's why I took that 6 month period to get it exact. And then you don't deviate from that formula.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, it's repeatable, right? So this is something that has to be consistent every time. So when you manufacture something and you're packaging a product, there's no variance. I mean, it has to be, bottle to bottle, it has jar to jar, it has to taste the same. And
Mhm.
it's very much a sense of balance. And I'll use Manhattan barbecue, that particular blend as an example. The Manhattan barbecue ribs was a recipe in my first cookbook. I make my own Manhattan barbecue sauce, and what we did was to essentially translate that sauce into a spice rub. But the blend of the flavors, it took a while because what you have are components like, hickory and the sweetness and the brown sugar and the bourbon, and
Mhm.
the ratios matter, and it's not necessarily as you would put together something that's in sauce form, because the potency of the spices um is different when you only have something that's dry and something that's dried.
Mhm.
So yeah, it takes a while. You'd be surprised.
Oh, I would imagine. How long are the spices good for? I know that when you buy spices in general, there's a certain, they don't give you an expiration date, but it
Yeah.
loses its potency over time. So in your case with distilled spices, is it a year and a half, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I tell people a shelf life is about 18 months. I mean, most people are telling me that they're getting through their blends, within, certainly 3 to 6 months. By the
Oh, sure.
time
Those are alcoholics. Of course they are.
yeah, that's my demographic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, but I wouldn't, I would say, long past a year and a half, then you start to really lose some of the punch of the flavor. I mean, it's still going to be great, but it's, that's what people leave spices in their pantry for,
Oh,
years.
yeah. No, I know I'm guilty. We talked
So
about shelf life. What about chef life, your life? You changed direction. So do you anticipate performing as a chef and doing all these other things in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Or do you think you're going to shift again and surprise us all by becoming a monk or a nun or I don't know, something else?
no,
No?
although I did act in high school, and I was I think it was The Crucible. Now I'm trying to remember the name of the play, but I played a nun. I played the vicaress, was my role. And my mom took pictures of me. Now, granted, I was in full makeup, so I don't even know how they fell for this, but sent pictures to my cousins, and said that I enrolled in it. I mean, that I went into a convent,
Right.
and they believed it, and they were very traumatized by that. So, but
See, I knew I was on the right track here. Yeah, exactly. But I guess my
but
larger question is, given your restlessness and creativity and drive and lack of sleep, are you are you going to be staying in this lane for the next 10, 15 years and
yeah.
then try something totally different? Or
No, no, I think honestly, I love writing. So, I mean, I do kind of want to stay with cookbooks, and I really love TV. It when you come up as I have, I like to say that I'm more sort of, Rachel Ray than Giada De Laurentiis, right? I'm more the kind of homegrown home cook chef.
down to
Um,
earth?
didn't go to culinary school. I have a practical perspective of
Mhm.
what it takes to cook at home. And I think sometimes formally trained chefs lose sight of that because they're in restaurants, they're in commercial kitchens, and they lose sight of what it feels like to have to cook for yourself and for your family.
Right.
Um,
Home cooked meal, in other words.
yeah, I mean, it's just, but I will say that I was raised on food TV. I mean, from PBS at very, very young age, watching Jacques Pepin, watching, Martin Yan, and now, he's got a restaurant here in Vegas, which is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Great chefs of the world. Enter Food Network in the 90s. I mean, I, learned how to cook through watching really, really great cooks on TV. And I would love to be able to carry that forward. I do have a streaming cooking show called Sin City Kitchen. And I would like to go national and, bring this to a broader stage is really what I want to be able to do. Food media, I think, is very, very important. Digital media, print media, of course, everybody, still reads magazines. I think it's great. A lot of people consume their content online. But I think, being able to kind of, reach an audience nationally on some sort of syndicated show would be amazing for anyone who's watching.
You mentioned, yes, you mentioned other chefs. Did you watch Do Your Child as well?
Of course.
All
Oh
right.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
throw it out there. And
Yeah.
she had an interesting background too. She wasn't like you with Silicon Valley, but she was with the CIA and all of that. That's
Oh, for
her
sure. And
background. Yeah.
she found her voice later in life,
Right.
which is also amazing. I mean, to carry that at the time that she lived, to carry as a middle-aged woman, to kind of find her voice and to find this niche and bring it to the people, bring it to, at the time it was housewives, but at the time that was innovative, exciting, new, different, and very, very bold for the age that she was. And, for me to really sort of discover this, I'm 52 now, is probably about, 48, 49 when I started doing this very,
Mhm.
very seriously. I can relate to, Gen X women in my age group who, might want to try to do the same thing. It's possible. This isn't something that, nobody can do except me. Everybody can do this. This is, you can write cookbooks, you can find a publisher, you can write a book proposal, you can do these things. I mean, this is possible if you've
Yes.
got the energy and you don't sleep.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think the one thing where you're missing the boat is that you mentioned earlier that your book is really designed for the American market, but coming from your background, I would think you would almost want to make it international or global, just from a sales perspective and an
Yeah.
influence perspective. Do you see that down the line, expanding that universe for you?
Absolutely. In particular, Food with Spirit. So Food with Spirit is available on Amazon for pre-sale now, and it ships on September 26th. So it is available now. And it's a hard copy book. And the
Food stains all
inspiration
over it. Yes.
the inspiration for that book is very global. I mean, I've
Yeah.
got like a cod miso soup that is very inspired by Japanese cuisine. I have ceviche and things from truly all over the world. So it is a type of book that people can be inspired by the global cuisine and not just American recipes. So that is definitely a departure where I hopefully will get some international interest.
Well, that's a great way to leave it. My guest has been Chef Alicia Shevetone. She's a Las Vegas pop-up chef, television personality, creator of Dink Cuisine, and she's author of 2 books at the moment and a 3rd book on the way in September. The 2 books are Italian Cookbook for Two and Vegetarian Ketogenic Cookbook for Beginners. And then, of course, Food with Spirit, which is going to be available in September. You can go to Amazon for that as well. She also has a line of spirit-infused seasonings called Distilled Spices, 7 signature blends, as we mentioned, concocted here in Las Vegas. So for everything about Chef Shevetone, go to dinkcuisine.com and distilledspices.com. And you can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Pinterest. And Alicia, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Ira. So nice to meet you, and thank you for having me on.
Same here. See you next time.